Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. We've got an article here we want to go through together on North Korea, so let's head over to it right now. North Korea now leans on crime networks to launder stolen crypto, RUSI. So once its proceeds mix with scam money, exchanges struggle to separate proliferation finance from ordinary laundering, the paper warns. So in brief, North Korea stole at least $2.8 billion in crypto between January 2024 and September 2025 and increasingly launders it through established criminal networks, a paper from British think tank RUSI says. Third parties sometimes buy the stolen coins outright at a discount, or the funds turn up mixed with proceeds from investment scams. Cashing out relies on money mules recruited in the Philippines, Indonesia, and China whose credentials sell cheaply enough to buy at scale. North Korea is increasingly pushing stolen cryptocurrency through the same money laundering networks used by scam syndicates and organized crime, blurring the trail investigators follow, according to a research paper published this month by the Royal United Services Institute, a British defense and security think tank. The regime stole at least $2.8 billion in virtual assets between January 2024 and September 2025. Funds, the paper says, are assumed to support its weapons program. Authors Allison, Owen, and Noémi També focus on the point where that money turns into cash rather than the well-documented journey through decentralized services. Ownership frequently changes hands before conversion, with a third party sometimes buying the stolen coins outright at a discount. One investigator told the authors that such a handover can be inferred when funds turned up mixed with proceeds from activities like pig butchering, investment scams, or at addresses tied to entities such as Cambodia's Owen group, whose infrastructure the Justice Department seized in June. Elliptic, which supplied data for the research, believes that handover often happens on the Bitcoin blockchain. After the February 2025 Bybit hack incident, responders at Zero Shadow found the regime relying on a network of launderers over the counter desks and peer-to-peer traders, often Chinese nationals working around the clock. Trader, a North Korean group behind the theft, used Chinese organized crime groups to move the money and hand back cash. That overlap is the problem the paper puts to compliance teams, because once the regime's proceeds enter criminal ecosystems, the markets of proliferation finance become hard to separate from ordinary laundering. Mules and small amounts. The accounts doing the cashing out usually belong to someone else, with mules recruited mainly in the Philippines, Indonesia, and China, where credentials sell cheaply enough to buy in bulk and open accounts at scale. Interviewees said mules told whom they are actually working for generally want no further part of it. Conversions happened in small pieces, with actors selling roughly $7,000 of stablecoins at a time on peer-to-peer marketplaces under the threshold that trigger bank review, while Zero Shadow found larger sums broken into $30,000 chunks so that a freeze would not be overly impactful. Behavior at the exchange itself offers further signals, from Astral VPN logins to the 50 to 70 support tickets launderers now file to get a single held transaction released. Reaching cash. Fiat rarely arrives by simple bank transfer, with proceeds from over-the-counter brokers often deposited into North Korean-controlled accounts using Union Pay cards issued by Chinese banks. The paper lists 19 Chinese banks that the multilateral sanctions monitoring team identified last year as used by the regime and its proxies. Of the roughly $1.5 billion taken from Bybit, 95% moved through decentralized services, and the monitoring team reported that all of it had been converted into fiat or hard currency by September 2025. The authors call for regulatory guidance on correspondent relationships between exchanges, standardized onboarding questionnaires, secure intelligence sharing channels, and a VSP identifier in payment messages so receiving banks can spot them. What that leaves for victims is clear from Bybit's own accounts. The exchange announced Monday that it had sued North Korea and won an order freezing identified assets, having recovered $48.4 million and frozen $30.5 million more, together about 5% of what was taken. So that's the end of the article, and we learned a few things. First and foremost would be that North Korea is trying to get into the general money laundering network. Okay, that makes sense because they're stealing, as you see here, nearly 3 billion in less than 2 years. And then they, of course, Cambodia's got the Hue One group that had assets seized in June. That was a bit of a scandal. But even if you look at the February 25 Bybit hack, very quickly you can see that a huge percent of it was going to OTC, peer-to-peer, Chinese nationals working around the clock, and North Korea using Chinese organized crime groups to move the money and hand back cash. Okay, so that was the goal. And then, of course, once the regimes proceeds to enter criminal ecosystems, the markers of proliferation finance become hard to separate from ordinary laundering. And you can see here $7,000 of stable coins, peer-to-peer, under the threshold that banks trigger review, oftentimes 30,000, okay, so that a freeze would not be overly impactful. And you can see even VPN logins to the 70 to 50 support ticket Launder is now filed to get a single held transaction release. So they have to follow up with transactions that are frozen or sort of pending. And then you can see that of the 1.5 billion from the Bybit hack, 95% moved through decentralized services, and that all of it had been converted into fiat or hard currency by September of 2025. So all of the 95% moved to decentralized services has already been moved into fiat or hard other currencies. So it's already far, far away from the original digital asset origin. And you can see here 48.4 million and 30.5 million. So only about 5% of the 1.5 billion has been recovered, right? So 40, 50, just less than 80 million of 1.5 billion, which is not a whole lot. But we wanted to cover North Korea a bit, cover how they are very, very savvy with digital assets and money laundering. So that's what we're getting with this article, and we are very grateful for everybody to be joining us. And we will see you on another video coming up soon as we continue to cover digital assets and stablecoins. We cover stablecoins a lot, and then of course regulation and legislation around the world as it relates to stablecoins and digital assets. So have a good day, everybody, and see you on another video soon here on the cryptodeposit.org YouTube channel.